Peer pressure. Pressure. Peer pressure.
And we're live. Welcome back to another episode of Peer Pressure. It's your host, Brando, in the building. I'm here today with my co-host, Damisito, a.k.a. Latino Nelly, a.k.a. Shaking Your Belly. And we got a very special guest in the building. We're actually in his building. Everyone, welcome. Yes. Welcome to the
in
stage,
the workspace.
Chris Strompolos.
Wow. Nicely done, sir.
I practiced.
Yeah, wow.
Do people
I
usually
was
get
nervous.
that? Do people usually get that wrong?
People murder it.
Really?
Strompolos. I get Strunkopolis. I get all sorts of crazy renditions of my name ever
Adding
since I was a
syllables.
little kid.
To me, it looks very like phonetically like that's how you say it. But maybe it's because
Some
I've heard
people
you
are
say it.
they get it, and some people don't.
It's hard to know where to emphasize the accent on the name.
Yeah. But
But-
thank you for the correct pronunciation.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, just to give some backstory on this, Dominic, you're Dominic's uncle.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how we kind of came together through this, and I guess that we could just dive right into you. And I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Dom, like him being your uncle or anything.
No. Yeah. So I don't actually know when I first met you. I want to actually tell how I first met, or my first, before I even met you. So how I remember it was, we found out you were dating my aunt, Auntie Mo, and Auntie Monica, I guess, but everyone calls her Auntie Mo. And my mom was like, "Oh yeah, Auntie Mo's dating this guy, and he's in a band." And I was like, "Oh really?" I was like, "Oh okay." And then she had your CD. It was a demo. It was a 3-song demo.
Yeah, which is in that closet over there.
We'll have to insert some songs from there because it was a
Or maybe not. Maybe you'd lose all your listeners.
I actually really liked it. I was right in at that. I went through phases of music. At that phase, I was so into that type of music, and it was if you were to play it right now, if it's that 3-song demo,
might bring you back.
I would know all the words.
Well, here's a little backstory. So when I was playing with the band Daycare for Dave in Long Beach, back 1,000 years ago, and I met Monica, and your mom's sister.
Yeah.
So Tracy, your mom, and Monica, my wife,
just for
whole
reference.
family tree. We
your
got it.
mom's sister, started coming to shows. I remember that Monica and I kind of took an interest in each other, but Monica and I didn't really acknowledge it. We were just kind of in denial, but we were hanging out a little bit. And I remember your mom, after a show, your mom sort of like confronted me. It was like one of those. So what are your intentions?
Oh,
Yes.
man. I could see your mom doing that.
I know. I could definitely see that too. That's hilarious to me.
And it was funny because she had the same conversation. This is going to embarrass you, but that's what podcasts are about.
Yeah,
right?
let's be honest. Let's get it all out on the open.
Yeah, let's be honest and embarrass each other. So your mom was like, so what are you doing? Like, are you hanging out with Chris? Are you guys dating? And Monica was like, I don't know. And she's like, because if you don't date him, I'm gonna date him.
My mom putting the pressure on
Yeah,
you. She's like, all right, well, I guess I got to take it. Yeah, that's hilarious.
So anyway, putting the heat on. So so that's the backstory. Where did we meet? You and I. You were little.
Yeah, I was probably, I remember, I think my earliest memory was your wedding, so.
That's one of my earliest as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I remember you wearing like a top hat and a little tux.
I wore a
Chill
zoot,
out, man.
I wore a zoot
The
suit.
zoot suit,
Oh,
right?
okay, got
That's
you.
right.
I had no idea what it was. My mom's like, this is what you should wear. I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing it. And then I had like the chain and everything.
You guys we could pull that picture out. You guys could drop a visual into the
Man.
into
Right,
the
insert
show.
clip here.
Yeah,
Look at that, me in my zoot suit. I'm gonna have to go back and find that.
we'll find it.
Yeah.
I think I have it.
I know we'll definitely find it.
Yeah.
I think a good place to start is your like growing up, your childhood. I know you started in Mississippi, correct?
Yep.
So what was it like growing? I know you grew up in there's a rubbish, not rubbish. What's the word I'm looking for?
Like
rural?
rural?
Is it? Yeah.
Rubbish and rural.
There was a lot of emotional rubbish.
Yeah.
but yeah, but yeah, it was rural. I mean, it was I don't know. It was a nice neighborhood that was. It was way back in the country on a river called the Chutacabuff River, and it was in North Biloxi, just off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. My back history was my mom and dad. I was actually born in Illinois, in Chicago, just outside of Chicago in Arlington Heights, and then grew up in the West Burbs for a few years, and then my parents divorced, and so my mom went back to Mississippi. I went with her.
She's from Mississippi?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And then my dad came out to California to manage a singer and hang out and do what people do in the 70s in California.
Who are managing singers.
Yeah, a lot of drugs and just general craziness. And so I in Mississippi, I was growing up with my mom and sort of came into that sort of Southern upbringing and went through the Southern school system, public school and private school, and then my mom was the first female TV anchor in the state of Mississippi.
That's
What year was that? Like,
82.
Oh, wow.
81. And so growing up around that time in the 80s in the Mississippi Gulf Coast, it was very interesting. It was a very, very interesting time. And then my mom met the chairman of the TV station, and they started secretly dating. And so my life, changed literally overnight, which was going from, a small, little 1-bedroom apartment with my mom, single mom, working her butt off, doing the best she can. And, and then she started hanging out with my stepfather, and then they, got married, and there we were in access to money, and it was a different kind of transition. And so soon after that, I was shipped off to boarding school. I went to a boarding academy in New York for 6 years.
How old were you when you went to the boarding academy?
I think I was 13.
Oh, got it. So right around like junior high years.
Yeah. So from 8th grade, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that I went to the Knox School on the North Shore of Long Island.
As a kid, I'm still pretty young, but as when I was a child, I would always weirdly fantasize or think about what boarding school would be like. Is it like college but for young, for kids, or how was that experience?
It was intense. I mean, it's you don't have any reference points when you're I mean, if you're just maybe East Coast kids had the boarding school sort of periphery and the experience and old East Coast money and kids that and I was kind of put into that and then put into a place of this sort of mandated pedigree, It
was like a prep
school?
Got it.
Classic East Coast college preparatory boarding academy. So I did that.
Did they play lacrosse there and stuff?
Oh, for sure.
That's exactly right.
LAX.
That's totally right.
That's hilarious.
It was lacrosse and equestrian. I rode horses. And,
oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So that is just what I imagined then.
Yeah. And I wore suits every day.
Oh,
and,
yep. Got the picture.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's Dead Poets Society.
Oh,
but it was
man.
co-ed.
Oh, okay, got
and but really strict. It wasn't military, but it was really strict. And when you're in it as a kid, you're like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And because you've got this discipline and this structure and this day-to-day, standing at your bedside with room check at 7 a.m. and you have to be fully dressed with your tie on and be ready to go to it was not fine dining, but formal dining in a dining room every meal, and you had waiter duty. We waited on the tables, and all the forks had to be lined up.
That's what I was wondering. You have the salad fork. You know how the the whole place setting goes and all
crazy.
that.
Yeah. So I had the good fortune of having a great education and a really groomed experience, and then went to the College of Worcester in Ohio, where I studied theater and music, and really kind of came out of my shell, and I was always a theater kid growing up in boarding school and wanted to be an actor, but during that time I was flying back and forth to Mississippi. So I had this Mississippi life where it was Mississippi, and then there's a lot of preconceived notions about what Mississippi is, people that haven't been there. So there's a lot of good and there's a lot of things that are just the South and a lot of bad, and just like anywhere. But growing up in it, there was a lot of good experiences and a lot of not so good experiences, but I was being transported back and forth between Mississippi and New York. And so I had this like very groomed East Coast Manhattan education, and then I'd go back down to Mississippi, and and I was doing Raiders at the time.
Wow.
Sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
you can go ahead, man.
I had a couple questions because I couldn't tell. I was trying to judge by your tone a couple things. So the first one was I feel like when your stepdad came into the picture, was that more of like a positive thing or like a negative? Like, or was it like, how was that adjustment period like?
It was really hard, because I think one of the it was a love-hate relationship that Jimmy, my stepfather, and I kind of had with each other. He loved me in a way that a sort of patriarch would, which is like, I'm going to take you over my knee and I'm going to beat you, but it'll be good for you, because it'll
Doing this because I love you type of
it'll teach you. And it wasn't so much that, but Jimmy was an alcoholic, and he was a pretty hard drinker, but he was also an extremely brilliant businessman, and his family, the Love family, had a long track record and history in the state of Mississippi and through the South of opening some of the most prestigious hotels and radio stations and bed and breakfasts, and and he was an investment banker at one time, and and so coming into that sort of wealth and education and pedigree in the South, especially in that sort of whoever says that the class system doesn't still exist, it surely does.
He's never been to Mississippi.
Right. And even here in California, I mean, the different sort of, all sorts of race relations and class systems, and, people still use the term white trash very, very freely. That's a notable class designator, across the board. And so, Jimmy was Southern aristocracy. And so that was, white linen suits and the whole deal.
Oh, wow. That's
so,
something, I feel like being out here, that's something that's kind of foreign to us.
Like I don't think we see that really.
Yeah, because even when you're talking about like some of the like even boarding school, like out here we have it's like private school and it's public school or Catholic school.
Yeah.
Like so boarding school is like foreign to us even.
Or go to Bel Air.
Yeah.
Go to Beverly Hills. Go to the Pacific Palisades and hang out with some of those kids. Hang out with the kids that are grooving around with their celebrity parents or their studio boss parents or the parents who are high-powered agents, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Those kids are smoking weed and driving their parents' BMWs, and
Gosh.
I can see it in my head already.
Yeah,
right? So there's a class system. It's just we have to kind of open our eyes to that. So I was spoiled. It really opened my eyes. I had my where are you guys at with language on the show?
Wherever you want to be.
We're at we're at a NC-17 level. I'm just kidding.
I don't know about that. But
No, I was going to say, people go through their real shitty phases of their lives where their ego gets them, and and that can continue on through their adult lives. But I mean, being this sort of kid thrust into wealth, having
it must have been like a cultural shock, like
it was a cultural shock. Yeah, I mean, going from New York to Mississippi to New York to Mississippi, and then coming back, and but I don't know. I mean, inevitably that bubble's going to pop, and you're going to have to face yourself and realize you're just being an asshole, And so, I mean, I went to school overseas for a while. I went to school in England for a bit, and, and that was interesting, and, an additional sort of an extension of my education. And, I mean, it means a lot and it means nothing.
Yeah.
So just getting like a little bit into the family dynamic, was that your stepdad's decision to send you off to boarding school, or was that?
Oh yeah, so circling back to your question, which is like that love-hate thing. I think he wanted me out of the picture, but I think that he also knew what was going to be really good for me as well. And Jimmy exposed me to a lot of amazing experiences and a lot of incredible life things that were really eye-opening. I mean, Broadway shows, beautiful restaurants, incredible travel, an incredible East Coast education, beautiful things, in Mississippi, great cars and whatever I wanted. And, but there's a price to pay for some of that stuff, growing up in that. So it was a shock. And, but as a kid, it's like kid in a candy store, but it's a different kind of dynamic because the emotional foundation shifts. And that's when you need it as a kid, so.
Right.
So in being like, I'm assuming you'd consider yourself an artist, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And an artist in a way that, I'm a person who has passionately and unwaveringly pursued a life of creativity, and creativity in a way of whatever I try to get my hands on, I try to express myself creatively, and that's music or food or the people I know, working with my wife, Monica, making clothes, everything is an expression of creativity. And with that, of course, it's your, I was going to say calling, but that's too bold of a word. It's you feel compelled to just be a creative person, to sing, to write lyrics, to express yourself with people. And you can express yourself with people creatively too. You imprint your experiences, and you onto things, and you present and you educate and you grow. So, yeah, I consider myself an artist, and and that's a different journey in and of itself.
So I know you just listed a bunch of different forms of expression. Have you ever felt drawn to one in particular, like stronger than the others?
Well, the medium of film is something that's always called me. I just think that people have there's a core understanding of something that is just in you, and movies and cinema and performance and writing and all those sort of things are probably the forefront that strikes me in the most prominent way, and then probably next to that would be singing.
So going back to like a little bit on film, it's always scared me in a way because it always feels like so big, like something I can't control. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just something that kind of overwhelms me a little bit if I'm ever working on or like on set or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Did that ever come to you, or you always felt like you had your little place in the set or like working on it?
Well, I had a different experience because I was copying a movie for most of my childhood, and when you kind of walk in the footsteps of the masters, you still have that big feeling, but we were owning it ourselves, and you had a projection of the completed product already in front of you to emulate. Painters do that, dancers do that, writers do that.
It's a reference, right?
Yeah, musicians do that. You follow in the footsteps of the masters in order to kind of create your own style and figure out what ideally as an artist you want to say. And I think that, yes, film is a big world. I think it depends on what your intentions are and how you want to navigate it as a creative person, and what aspect of the film industry you want to be in. And that will help define your fearlessness. You get further into it, and you become your fear will either kick you out of it, and it'll purge you out of it, and it will repel you, and it will reject you, and then you'll end up doing something else, as the film industry does with a lot of people. Or you decide what you want to do, and you roll up your sleeves, and you fearlessly go into that arena of, and it's a battleground, because you have to really fight your way through it, depending on what you want to do. Do you want to be a producer? Do you want to be a writer? Do you want to be a director? Do you want to be all three of those things? Do you want to be a cinematographer? Do you want to be an actor? What do you want to do? Do you want to be in the sidelines? Do you want to be in front of the camera, behind the camera? Do you want to be on the business end? Do you want to be in distribution? Do you want to be in the digital side? I mean, what do you want to do? There's so many jobs. And so, yes, it is big, but I think once you have a conclusive conversation with yourself as an artist and decide what aspect of that you want to claim, and what aspect of the film industry where you think you can have a voice, then it becomes a lot smaller.
Got you.
Touching on Raiders a little bit, was that the first time? How old were you when you started that project, by the way?
I saw the movie in July of 1981. I think I was 10.
Got it.
And Raiders of the Lost Ark, by the way, the famous Spielberg.
Oh yeah,
movie.
sorry. I
In case your listeners and watchers don't know,
yeah, they were probably like,
Raiders?
what do you mean? I know, I'm
Raiders?
wearing a Raiders hat right now.
So Chris doesn't look like an athlete.
Yeah, they're like, so what's this whole thing with the football? I don't know.
I fell in this.
I don't see how this relates.
Yeah, this is.
So when you started the Raiders project, which is, for everyone who doesn't know, recreating the whole Steven Spielberg movie shot by shot, was that kind of, we're going to get on touch on that a little bit more in a little bit, but was that the kind of the first time that you were like express your creativity, or was there like before that, did you know like that's kind of what you wanted to be in, or when did you kind of get bit by that bug?
I started doing theater. I was doing a lot of theater, musical theater, just acting in shows locally in Mississippi, and I was always a huge Star Wars nerd. So the idea of fantasy and escape was something that, like a lot of kids, I just gravitated towards, and it was exciting for me. And that was the world that I sort of dug. And I think that, coming from a divorced family, being raised by a single mom, being passed around back and forth between divorced parents, the schooling system, being left with my grandparents when my mom, sort of my parents left. I was left with my grandparents, kindergarten and first grade. And so there was a lot of transplanting. And so, children that have an emotional fracturing, they're gonna find ways to offset that.
Yeah.
They're going to find ways to heal, and and protect themselves and isolate. And creativity is a wonderful way to do that. So for me, it was like, well, how can I be a hero in my own life? And a lot of this is retrospective psychoanalysis. You know, when you're a kid, you're just like, I just want to do that. And so playing Indiana Jones, after I saw that movie, sure seemed like an amazing idea, because it was absolutely everything in a male that I would ever want to be. And so I just wanted to play Indiana Jones and emulate that, and be, wear the hat and wear the jacket and fight the bad guys. But it's also an experiential thing. I think there was I wanted to sort of deliver myself out of this world that I was in, which is like, wouldn't it be cool to be chased by a boulder?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool to like be in a room completely on fire?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool to be on an airplane and fight on an airplane as it's blowing up? Wouldn't it be cool to drag behind a truck? Wouldn't it be cool to be in a room filled with snakes? Wouldn't it be cool to get the girl and learn how to play a, right? And play with a bullwhip and shoot a gun? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the boyhood fantasy. You thrust yourself into that, and so that was my first taste. And then I started going to boarding school, so I was going back and forth. But when I was going back and forth, I wanted to be an actor. I mean, that's what I was trained to do. I did tons of shows in boarding school, and then I went to like a kind of a theater conservatory in Ohio, and got my education there, and did repertoire, like repertory theater, and classical training and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, Raiders was probably the big
thing. The big jump into it.
Yeah.
At 10, you're like unbelievably young. What helped you like have the motivation to do this? Like, I know, did you think that it was a big project when you started doing it? Like, you didn't think that it would span this long, like, of your life?
I thought I would knock it out in a summer, and
a couple weeks.
Yeah, and then I start writing it, and I was like, this is, I got farther into it, and I thought I'd knock it out in a summer, and it just went summer after summer, and it ended up taking 7 years. And every single summer, every single moment that we were growing up, and with an army of neighborhood kids working on this all the time. Me, my creative partner Eric, and Jason Lamb, and we all kind of rallied people in the neighborhood to do it. So no, I didn't think it would take that long, at all.
So my biggest question, because it's a 7-year, like you said, it's a 7-year process, remaking it shot by shot, down to every detail. What I see kids like these days, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, kids these days, they don't know, but like, I don't know what separates that bunch of kids, like you three and the whole like cast and crew who literally did it and persevered and did it for 7 years and did everything right. And like, what separates someone like that to someone who says, I want to like recreate Indiana Jones? Like, what do you think? Was it about you or about the group of people you were working with, where it was you got it done and you finished? You know what I mean? Because finishing that is a feat in itself. So what was it that was different about that group of people that made it get done?
I think it's a great question, and I think that's the sort of fairy dust that a lot of people look to get, in terms of the answer. What's the answer to that?
Yeah.
How do I get that algorithm woven into my life to make that happen, either for my own kids or myself or whatever? And I've received that question probably every time at every Q&A, at every screening, in the 13 or 14 years of touring that I've done, and I think that it was a special situation where we had our mother's support. You know, so mom support's a big thing.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
a big thing.
Having the mom energy there, and you know, mom and dad energy is always better.
Yeah.
you know, if it's there in a healthy way. You know, but mom energy was there, so she supported me and Eric and Jason's mothers, also single mothers, supported them. So I think you have to have some sort of foundation from a parent or a relative or somebody who's like rock solid when you're going through that, because you're questioning yourself and you're growing up and you're awkward and you don't know who you are, and you know, and also the accountability and strength of the friendship. I think a lot of those the chemistry that was established and the chemistry that was realized back then is that you have to choose a good partnership. You know what I'm saying? So it's the people that you choose to create with serves as a fundamental chemistry. And I think that's what a lot of kids these days, you know, may need to better understand. I think technology has, and I'm not bashing technology by any means, because I think it's you know, it depends on what school of thought you have. There is downsides to technology and the just globalization of like immediate correspondence and like, you know, hey, what's up? I'm good. You know,
What are you doing right now?
You know, and the, you know, either the degradation of language or, you know, the avoidance of you know, just direct communication and verbalization and eye contact and just basic human stuff of young people being in the same room together and wondering how the hell to communicate, you know, properly. So I think technology has changed that. Also, technology has changed the creative process and the way that people engage with each other in the creative process. There's you know, there's a potential isolation even down to music.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll send you the file and you can record in your house by yourself in your basement 7,000 miles
yeah.
away, and
Yeah.
you lay down the tracks and then you email it back to me and then we'll make music together. Wow, that's great. You know, and that's sometimes logistics, and big bands do that so they don't have to see each other and they can keep making money and keep working. It's also kind of easier for busy people, but for like organic basic chemistry of creativity, I think that's the way things have changed now. So you know, there's a lot of variables. I mean, to answer your question, what's the magical sort of, you know, thing that kept us going, which is we were forced to problem solve. You know, we kept each other in check. Sometimes we kept trying things over and over again. And when you keep doing that and you keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying, you realize you get to a certain point where it's like, well, we can't give up now. We have to keep going. And so learning the due diligence and the discomfort of the creative process, I think, is just as important. You know, and if you can come into contact with that earlier on in your career as a creative person, whatever medium you're working on, to realize, you know what, it's not always fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
Oh
not.
my God.
You know, being a creative person is not always. You know, wow, aren't we having the best time?
All the time.
No,
Yeah.
it's, you know, sometimes it's just it's hard work, but that's okay, you know, and the most important thing is that you finish and that you learn something. And as an artist, you know, who is, you know, twice you guys' age, you know, it's was that grammatically correct? I don't even know. You gauge your success off of different things as you get older. You know, hey, I'm an artistic person and I'm pursuing a creative life, therefore I have to have this grocery list of successes.
Yeah.
You know, and when you start to sort of crowbar yourself into that, you'll drive yourself fucking crazy. You know, and you have to come to your own sense of realization as a creative person, as a young person, you know, pursuing a creative path of what it means to you to be successful. The fact that you can get off of work on a Friday night, truck it with your good friend, you know, to Silver Lake and hole up in a cool garage.
A really cool garage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and set up with gear that you own, you know, and do a podcast because it comes from your heart. That's a success. You know, as opposed to, you know what, man, this podcast isn't making any money and nobody's listening and we don't have, you know, X million listeners and we haven't gone up on YouTube and we don't have commercial sponsors and, you know, maybe we should just give this up.
Yeah.
As opposed to, isn't this fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and you're going to come to that place no matter what no matter what you work on, it should always be, are we having a good time? Are we working hard? Yes, we're going through some challenges, but what are the successes here? And so for me, being an artistic person and pursuing multiple mediums of creativity throughout my life, I take peace in the fact that I've created a body of work. And that keeps me from going insane.
More towards the finishing end of your process, I kind of stemmed this question from Dom, because I know Dom as a person. Dom makes music, and I preface this every time we talk about
Peer
this.
pressure.
Thank you.
Okay.
And,
I meant to hit the bomb.
it's
Sorry.
okay. But Dom makes music, and something that I always tell him, like, he's a real perfectionist. Like, it needs to be perfect before he puts it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just tell him, like, yo, just put it out. Just put it out. Like, it's fine how it is. I think it's good. I think it's good, but it's never up. It feels like it's never up to his standards. How is that for you? Are you someone that will hold it? I mean, before it's perfect, or how do you know when it's done, or what is that like?
That's a great question, and those are really excellent things to analyze about yourself as a creative person, because every artistic personality is different. And for me, perfectionism has gotten in my way more times than not. I think I think it's really a fine balance. I appreciate perfectionism and I appreciate precision. And a lot of people that I work with are not as precise as I am.
Yeah.
I probably lean a little more towards the OCD. But you have to stop and take a step back. This sounds terribly cliche, but it's absolutely true. That I respect the perfectionist sort of personality in everything that I do. And if it's not, if the mathematics of my creation are not absolutely perfect and accurate, then I tend to lean towards sort of a defeatist mentality about it, and it's just like, well, fuck it. I don't want to do it. And then it becomes just a black and white kind of thing. It's either perfect or it's not. And I don't think that's it, because, the connective tissue of why we are emotionally attached to certain bodies of creativity is because of the raw quality, because things aren't perfect, because things are a little sloppy, because things are real. I mean, if every podcast were everybody was happy and answered the great, and all the questions were perfectly answered and we all got along and isn't it sweet and all nice, and who's going to listen to that podcast?
Right.
But if you listen to a podcast where, hey, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Don't answer.
Hey, man, that was my question. Come on.
Yeah. Don't ask me a question like that. Well, that's not a perfect podcast, but you know what? People are going to listen. Why? Because it's emotionally real, or it's raw, or it's exposed, or there's truth involved. And so, perfectionism can be really invasive. I think you have to having standards is important. Having a sense of integrity is really important. Having an internal sense of truth, which I think you do.
Thank you.
From what I've seen in your, just the way that you handle yourself and your life, I think that's important. That's inevitably going to come through in what you do, and what you say. Is this saying what I wanted to say, as opposed to, is this orally perfect?
Yeah.
Are all the levels the same? This one sample that has a little, where the bass is just a little too low, and the frequency that I've put through the audio station, it isn't really, it isn't perfect, but I should really put more compression on this, and you're going into it apologizing for your creative expression, and sometimes you just have to say, here. So my advice is don't get in your own way.
Which is exactly what I'm doing.
Oh my God.
The last time
All
I
the
released music was like in 2015 or 14.
Yeah, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, just because create, get it out. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to get better at it. And releasing it and letting it go and giving it over to other people to listen to is part of the conclusive experience.
Yeah.
If you keep it to yourself, then you're denying yourself of the opportunity to bookend that creative experience. Then you're just going to have a life of loose ends, and that ain't cool.
Does art have to have recipients, you feel like?
That's also a good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, if you can sit in a room and paint and write music and do all, and be completely satisfied, I don't know. Again, it's a balance. I mean, inevitably somebody's going to read that book. Inevitably somebody's going to see that painting. Inevitably somebody's going to listen to that artwork. Unless you're some sort of like weird prodigal autistic person who
Yeah.
locks herself in a room and then like
Writes for 12 hours straight.
Yeah.
Or,
And-
Like a hermit. You know?
and then years later, all your manuscripts are discovered in under a mound of cat litter.
Yeah, oh gosh.
50 years later, and you're a genius. Well, I think it depends on what kind of life that you want. Do you want to be a hidden artist, or do you want to be an artist that tried? And I think where a lot of people go wrong is they don't want to make themselves vulnerable, and they don't want to open themselves up to what people are going to think and what people are going to say and how people are going to criticize them, or they're afraid of failing. And so I think a lot of those things, fear, it's all justified with, I don't need anybody to see my work.
Yeah.
I need to just I just do it for myself, and that's all I need. And there is a component of that I think does ring true, because you still have to love the process and you have to enjoy it for you. I'm doing this for myself, and I don't care. I don't care what people think about my process. I don't care if people think that I don't know this software. I don't care if people are aware of my influences, but they're going to have a lot more respect for you if you say, listen to this, check this out, read this, look at my painting, listen to my song, come see this thing that I made. I'm in this play, I'm doing this thing, I made this short film. It may be horrible.
Yeah.
But you know what? You keep trying, you keep going, and you keep putting it out there. So does art need recipients? I don't know. Maybe not, but then what kind of experience is that?
Yeah.
What's artwork hidden in a dark room where nobody can see it?
It's almost
Right.
like if a tree falls in a forest, does anyone even?
Yeah,
there's no. It's just there.
Yeah, so I don't know. It can be a very cyclical conversation, because then if artwork is genius but nobody sees it, then is it genius?
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think it all just depends. Do you want people to listen to your songs? I think probably you do.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it too, because I think as an artist, like when you show someone your art or your whatever it is, that's like being some of the most vulnerable, because it's something you put like all of this time in. And one of the big things about like being an artist or a painter or a musician is you're literally saying, take this part of me and do you like it or not? Which is like a question I think we ask as like humans in general, like, oh, do they like me? Like, how do they feel about me? But it's like such a direct interaction of giving someone a piece of this. What do you think about this?
Yeah.
Well, you don't even have to go that far. You don't have to say, what do you think about this? You can just leave it at, I'm giving this to you. And if you want to give me feedback, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I created it, and I'm releasing it, and I'm making myself vulnerable to you in letting you listen to my music. And, that is a self-confronting conversation that you have to have with yourself as a creative person, which is just let it go. Let yourself go from that release, because what's the last album that moved you, or the last piece of music that really moved you, or what's the last film that you saw that like was like, oh God, that was good.
Yeah.
Where you projected yourself into it and you're like, I really wish that I did that, or I really wish that I wrote that, or someday I'm going to do something like that, and you had this like undeniable ego-driven comparative experience with that piece of art. I mean, what was it?
I just saw, I would say, a Florida Project, which was a movie I saw this past year, where I saw it and I was like,
Same director of Tangerine, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a nice. So okay, so let's talk about that. What is it about that movie that you dug?
Flipped it on you. Like,
it was the part about that movie I like, it was like telling a story, right? But it was telling a story about something. I think it was these kids who were. I was just gonna give a quick background on the movie. It's about these kids who grow up in these Florida projects, which are basically motels, rundown motels, where people like they don't squat in, but they pay, and they basically use them like apartments, but they're technically motels, so you can only stay for a couple of days. And it follows these kids who are like probably like 6, 7 years old, and they're running around and they're playing. They don't know. They have no idea what's going around them. And there's drugs, and people are getting beat up, and people are going to jail. And it's basically about these kids who are so innocent and so like living regular kid lives, and then at the end of the movie, that's kind of stripped away from them, and just seeing like in these bleak kind of dark scenarios how there's still this pure innocence and like happiness and joy, and seeing that a kid is a kid no matter what, wherever they're raised, and kind of the environment, kind of seeing how the environment shapes them. And that was like, it was something so beautiful to me about that movie, even though it's kind of like a dark movie. And that was like, oh, I don't know. I think it was relatable to me is what it was.
So Dom just gave an example of a film that moved him. What's a piece of music that has moved you?
It's crazy because the album on his shirt, Blonde by Frank Ocean, I would honestly have to say that really I've listened to it for like the past 2 years. This is basically the only thing I've listened to with sprinkles of other stuff in there.
Why?
I've never really asked myself this, but for some reason I really latched on to it. The artist Frank Ocean, he is so vulnerable, but at the same time, the way he constructs his songs and the way he like makes music, it's so he does so much with so little. I feel like it's very sparse, but you can feel all the things behind his voice and everything that he puts into it, but it's so small at the same time. And he just has this like, I think I'm caught up also in like the mystique, because he's kind of like not active on social media and all those things, and it just feels like it's
mysterious.
It's kind of coming out of this place that you don't know where it's coming from, and still I connected with it. Like he's like the gremlin dude we were talking about, but I'm still finding it. You know what I mean? And it feels like it's mysterious, but it's vulnerable, and it's cool. Like he just sounds like a cool person on his tracks.
So to bring the conversation back to the question, what is it about, the sort of like people receiving your art, and what is it about perfectionism, and what is it about communication, and what is it about those things that hold us back, and all of the things that you just mentioned, these are the director, the creators of that film, Frank Ocean with this album, there's an intimacy there, there's a vulnerability there, and those are the things that people want to see. They want to hear those things. That's the raw quality of the artist that people really want to see. So if you're being vulnerable in the music and not creating perfect music, but be creating vulnerable music or creating truthful moments in film, writing it, capturing it. I mean, I think I won't say that's the responsibility of the artist, because not all art is that way, but you have to have something that resonates in the heart, because it's about communication. You capture it, you package it in a certain way, in an artistic way, and then you re-deliver it, and it's got to communicate something. And if it's truthful and yours, and it doesn't matter what people think. It does, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
You've done your job.
And
I've been truthful with this expression here.
And if there's one thing I think, because Brandon was a big collaborator on the first album I ever did too, and if there was one thing I was proud of, it wasn't like, I think as that part's there, right? And let's say that's the meat. It was the vulnerability and the connection or connectiveness that you can get with a listener. I think that part was there on that project, but it was the way it was packaged and the way it was like the actual skill behind it and the actual like the bells and the whistles or how it came through. I think that was not up to par. But I think if there's one thing I can look back on, that was there, that real part, which that was something I was happy with in the product.
And you know what? You can't expect something of yourself that you're not capable of yet. I mean, your first album isn't going to be, it isn't going to be the most, award-winning album ever. It may be one hell of an experience.
Yeah.
It may be one hell of an effort, and it may be really good. It could be great. But it may be. It's not the thing that you feel in your heart that's inspired you. I really want to be Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
I really want to be Jim Morrison. I really want to be, I don't know. I really want to be Kendrick Lamar. I really want to be. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah. Kendrick Lamar.
So
Yeah.
I mean, that's because I've had that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm ignorant in terms of hip hop. It's a genre that I don't know about. I know I know some of the main artists, but it's just That's something I'm aware of. So, whatever you're trying to be and whatever you're trying to emulate, and whatever artist that you see yourself as in terms of the benchmark that you want to hit, you're not going to hit that the first time. And the most important thing is that you learned, you captured it, you finished it, and you got it out, and you're doing your next one, and you're doing your next one,
Yeah.
and you're doing your next one.
Sorry, before
No,
we,
go ahead.
I want to kind of turn the tables before we get too far off this, because I know you asked us that question. So I want to ask, what is like either a piece of film, of music that you've seen or digested recently that kind of spoke to you? And the same thing is why I think it'd be interesting.
It's funny. After Raiders, Raiders has been a long journey for me, and it's been a long, incredible spectrum for me. And, we took the fan film about as far as it will go, all the way to the documentary, and having...
Congratulations, by the way.
That scared me for a hot
Brandon
second.
Brandon just watched it again.
I watched it again.
Yeah.
Cool,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, and so, when you put yourself in the position to make yourself vulnerable, to put your whole life on display, not only in the present state, but in the past experience as well, and you kind of put it all out there for people to see, it changes a lot of one's relationship with that particular saga in your life, and I'm thankful for everything, but that documentary, standing back, you can't help but hope that it's sold to market. It was a higher profile documentary. It went out there into the world. It had a solid indie distribution. A 3-year deal on Netflix ain't bad. But the monetary aspect of it was not there. And the book, exciting, amazing author, incredible experience. My life is captured. I could go out and get hit by a bus tomorrow, but my daughter will still have that book and know what her dad was all about, So I'm thankful for a lot of the experiences, but the monetary, thing that's the artistic struggle. When you feel that pain and you feel that sacrifice and you put yourself out there and you make yourself vulnerable so that you can communicate, you hope to get something back, and it might be monetary or it might not, and then changing and altering my life to go on a national tour with Eric, and his wife. Part of the tour was like tours should be, flying around hotels and that kind of stuff, but hustling for our own sponsorship money and begging and pleading. And then the latter part was pretty sucky, very hard. It was like a band on the road. You just keep grinding, and it's not always fun. And you do the show, and you show up, and you smile, and you perform, and you go to the next city. And we did I think I did 28 cities in 30 days.
Oh gosh.
And that's like city,
man.
city,
Yeah, that's
city,
like
city,
every
show,
oh my gosh, man.
show. And I couldn't do it anymore. And financially and emotionally, my world was falling apart.
Yeah.
Completely falling apart. And I had to pull out of it. I had to come home and restabilize my life. Eric went on to go tour the other 3 months that he did with his wife and his kids, and I was like, sorry. So there was a sort of, I'll use a literary and musical, sort of like term, which is this denouement. It was this closure, to the tour that left me angry, and it left me hurt, and it left me sour, and so the experience with Raiders, took shape in a different way. That's not all it left me with.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's a big shitstorm and that's just the way it is. But one's artistic relationship with that kind of trajectory is different than, say, an album or a book or a thing, where there's a shorter period of time. So my love of film has shifted, I'm coming back to the question. So I haven't seen a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Only because I think I have gone into a sort of strange deprivation with cinema that, it's left me, there's some movies that I've really liked, but they've been really fluffy, you know, and a lot of movies that I watch are with my daughter because I simply don't have the time to get out of the house to go to the,
It's an event to get out.
it's
to
an
the theater.
event. It's
Yeah.
also expensive.
Yeah.
You know, like
sure.
a dinner and a movie is like $300, you know, and
I
you're
know.
like,
Oh man.
you know,
Gosh.
you take your family out and you have to go
Yeah.
park, and then you have a babysitter, and then there's dinner,
Especially in
and then
LA. Like,
Yeah,
man,
you know, so
I can't
it's-
even.
So there's movies that I'll require myself to sit down and see, but a lot of the independent movies that are just out there and fantastic, I haven't exposed myself to that, and I think that's maybe where my heart is. So I haven't opened myself up to that, and I know when I close myself off to the cinematic world, I tend to go to music, and so that's kind of one of my first loves is I go to music, and there's just a lot of amazing music out now. The exposure and the access to just great music is so exciting. And so I'll go on Spotify and Pandora and buzz around. I think the last album that really just rocked my world, and I'm probably a little late to the game on this one, but somebody turned me on to this artist. His name's Sohn, Sohn. And I was listening. Actually, I got turned on to Sohn when I was listening to another artist. His name's Sampha.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We're big. Well, I don't know. I'm not speaking
a
for you.
decently large Sampha fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was listening to Sampha. Actually, one of my daughter's friends turned me on, a little 10-year-old girl.
No
Wow.
way.
Yeah, for sure. And I was like, let's put on some Sampha. And I was like, I don't know
ooh.
who this is. And I was like, wow.
What is this?
What the hell is this?
Yeah.
Intimate, raw,
Really raw.
Yeah.
great music. And then in the same sort of mix, this artist Sohn came up, and it's spelled Sohn. And I was like, it just electrified me the first time I heard it. And not a lot of artists do that, because, I'm getting older and I'm just like,
They're all the same.
I'm just going to eat this sandwich and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And, a lot of, so you stay receptive and you stay open. But so this artist, and then I looked into his path. Young dude, not real young, he's not, he's this bearded guy in his 30s who started producing music. I think he was from London, and then he just sort of got, ruffled in his life, and he decided to go to Vienna. I used to live in Vienna, and played in a band there and studied German in Vienna, and so he went to Vienna, and he just like stripped himself down, and he started producing music out of his little studio apartment there, and started working on his songs diligently, playing some local, things, and just working on himself and working on himself and working on himself, and posted some stuff on YouTube, and it kept growing and growing and growing, and his he just blew up, and then he went and played a show, where he packed it out. And a management team showed up, and they signed him. And now, then he did a second album, and both of his albums are really fucking good. They're really, really good. So those two albums really affected me. The Black Angels is another band that, just split my brain in half. Another Pandora find where I was like, who's that band? Where can I find their album? Where are they playing?
How can I get it now?
Yeah. And I went, like some 16-year-old kid, I like found the album. I went to Amoeba. I bought the album.
Wow.
I found out where they were playing. I bought 2 tickets. I went to Pomona,
No way.
No way.
The
And
Glass House or the Fox?
the Fox.
Oh, okay.
It's a drive.
Yeah. That's a trek.
And it was awesome. And I felt, and that kind of connectivity with creativity is, it's vibrant,
Yeah.
It's the full cycle, where you enjoy it, you find it, you love it, you explore it, you immerse yourself, and you dig it. And so probably those two pieces of music really turned me on as of late. And then you find other things to turn you on. And for me, it's been a long journey in my artistic life, and being a married person and being a dad and all those sorts of things, your artistic self changes in proximity to that. And I've had years and years and years of, addiction problems, you know, and struggled with drugs for a real long time, and I struggled with alcohol for a real long time, you know, and I, just last year I just hit a wall, you know. It's like I'm almost 50, you know, and I can't keep doing what I'm doing like I'm in my 20s anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and you drink till you black out for 3 decades. It's gonna take a toll
It's gonna
after
catch
a little
up,
while. Yeah, you know. And so I hit a wall, and I realized I needed to sort of stop, like really fucking stop, you know. And so I checked myself into like an addiction recovery program, and so I'm full thrust in the middle of that right now. The reason I bring that up is because that changes one's perspective on how you express yourself creatively. That has had a direct correlation with my artistic path and what I feel like I need to gravitate towards and how I am going to express myself in this next phase of my life, you know. So it's just a constantly changing thing, you know.
Touching on that a little bit, so you feel me?
I felt you breathing.
Yeah,
I breathed.
I was
And I was
like,
like, okay.
Yeah.
What's that like? Like, is that so? Like, of you coming to that realization and being like, this is something that needs, like, I need to stop this. You know what I mean? What's that realization process like? Like, were you like aware of that for a while, and it just like reached a certain point? Was there a certain event, or like what is that like?
Well, you have to come, you know, you have to come to the realization that your life cannot continue that way anymore because of the destructive quality that it has. And I'm not getting on my soapbox. I'm not like, everybody needs to stop drinking.
Yeah,
You know,
alcohol's bad for everyone.
yeah, no, that's not what I'm saying, and I'm not getting self-righteous, and I'm not getting, I'm not, waving my finger at anybody, because it's just about the individual, and you hit a wall and you realize, okay, look, I've got a certain amount of potential in these last few remaining years of my life, which is an okay.
Few? Wait.
Well, no, I mean, but I'm halfway done.
Yeah,
right. I'm halfway there, right? And so you realize, well, what am I going to do for the rest? What's the other half looking like? And what do I need to do to amplify my possibility and my potential to create myself, to create myself again, to reinvent myself as an artist, whatever the fuck that means, to be the best dad I can be, to be the best husband I can be, how do I magnify those things in myself? Well, I realize that if I keep drinking the way I'm drinking, I'm not going to be able to do those things.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have, the curve is going to drop off, and you just dull yourself, and so that realization comes with a certain amount of fear. Like you have an, oh, fuck, and you wake up and you realize it just slaps you between the eyes, and you realize you have to make a change to reach that positive version of yourself that you always want to. God, I wish this song could be better. God, I wish this book could be better. God, I wish this movie that I'm writing could be better. God, I wish this relationship could be better. All these sorts of things, this margin of like excellence that you think you want to hit in your life. There's certain things that hold you back, and that's about getting older and getting wiser, or just having a realization. You can have that realization as a kid, but just realizing you can't do what you're doing anymore. And falling on your ass.
Yeah.
You just fall hard.
You're like,
stumbling home at 3:00 in the morning and seeing the fear in your child's face and the fear in your wife's face, and you're drunk, and then you're hovered over a toilet and you're puking. It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I gotta clean up. I got to clean up my act here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, and that's the time where you fall hard and you realize I have to make a change. Has it been easy? Hell no, it hasn't been easy. I mean, addiction is a terrible, terrible thing. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's in direct correlation with being a creative person for me, and always has been, and so it's an invasive thing.
Yeah.
But it's hard to let it go because it's so
intertwined.
Would you say that those two things they were directly correlated with each other? And before this like mental shift of you need to make a change, how are you expressing yourself, and what can you say now in terms of yourself now? How are you doing this? Like, what is different, or is it different mediums, different ways, or?
I still, well, I had to pull myself, and I'm still like in the middle of it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I'm still, I'm still, you know, I feel still feel like a newborn baby right now, you know, because I'm only like less than 6 months into sobriety, you know. But with that comes the rebuilding. What that means, going out, rebuilding a social network with genuinely.
Yeah.
Not just going out and being a dark asshole and drinking myself into a pit, you know, or isolating, you know, going out there and taking the risk to go try to find a job that I actually like, that's going to give me self-value again, you know. I mean, those are important things to like to feel like I can work again. I did that, you know. I feel like I just found for the first time in my whole life, I found a job that I really dig, you know.
I feel the
cool
journey.
feeling, yeah.
I feel I feel like I'm looking for a job right now. I'm like, what am I really gonna enjoy that I'm not minding spending my time at? But go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
And then we could talk about that, you know, because
For sure.
I've been all through. That's a big one for artists. I have to work while I pursue my craft.
Yeah.
I have to work while I pursue my craft. And then you can get angrier, and you can get angrier, and get angrier, and get more resentful, and then you start to fuck up at your job, and then you start to drink a little bit more, and then you start to fuck up at your job, and then you look for another job, and it's always going to be this paradoxical, antagonistic relationship unless you come to peace with it, you know. And that's about finding a job that you like and coming into alignment with yourself creatively. I mean, who knows? It's just a big journey. Fact of the matter is that you have to support yourself somehow.
Yeah.
Practically,
You know,
right, yeah.
and that's a frustrating thing for artists. I know what I love. I know what I want to do, but I can't support myself off of it right now. You know, and shoring that up is a frustrating journey, but it's part of the journey. You know, so I'm sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed right now. I'm a little pink cloud, you know, sort of floating along, and, you know, and I feel, you know, like I'm opening myself back up. Before that, it was getting into my music. You know, I really felt like I put myself into a very risky situation again with my creativity, really exploring some dark stuff.
Yeah.
And I made some really awesome breakthroughs, and I came up with a new album of songs that I started working with a producer and engineer, and I went in and I spent a whole lot of money and many hours, and I laid down lots and lots of tracks and sang my heart out for a week and pushed myself to a very raw artistic place. A lot of that was great, a lot of it was not. And so I basically, this was on the cusp of, you know, when I was drinking and kind of like really going down. I had to withdraw, you know. I had to pull out of that experience, and basically, you know, it made them insecure, made my producer insecure, and my engineer kind of like, you know, who was co-producing the album, sort of like a little unstable, like, whoa, you're pulling the project from us,
what's
like,
Yeah.
fuck you, man, you know.
Yeah.
Like, what, and it wasn't like that, but it made them uneasy because of my insecurities, you know. So back to the perfectionist.
Yeah, the perfectionist thing came out.
It wasn't perfect, but we came up with some great stuff. But I don't know. I mean, what was I into now? What am I doing now? What was I doing before? I mean, I think there is a direct correlation. You just have to feel compelled to create sometimes, and realize that if you don't feel compelled to create, sometimes it's okay. You know, and you have to take a break, and maybe you create in different ways, you know, but keep creating, you know. And maybe it's not that, maybe it's not perfect. I don't know if I answered your question properly, but
No, you're
No,
good.
yeah, I think you did.
Wrong. I'm saying.
I had a question. So one of my interesting things that I like looking at is I think there's this structured way or this set path, a way of how you're supposed to raise a child. And I think I'm always interested in like creative people or people who live like not the same as like mainstream America, how they raise their kids. Because being a creative person and going down the path you have, I think you see the world a lot differently than a lot of people would. So how does that translate into raising your child in a way that maybe you weren't raised, or maybe that's not like the normal way?
yeah, such a good question, Dom. So it's a great question, man. Well, before I got married,
Uh-huh.
I didn't like children, and I still really don't like children. You know,
It's fair. It's fair.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna be honest with you. I mean, kids are not like I love all kids.
Yeah.
You know, I know what kids need. You know, they need love and they need support and they need
Food.
yeah, they need to eat.
Maslow's hierarchy. Of
You know, I mean, I don't have a dislike of children, but you know, I'm not that sort of like, you know, big warm hug of a person that loves all kids. I probably tend to be a little harder on kids, you know. But one thing I do know is I love my daughter, and so you don't have to, you know, as an artistic person, as a dark person, you know, as a person who leans towards the dark aesthetic and dark feelings, and I've struggled with depression and addiction and all those sorts of things, and I still do, you know. But one thing I did make up my mind to do, which is if I'm going to become a dad, I'm going to be the best dad I can be. And I'm going to work really hard at it. And I think that's the realization that any artistic person ideally should have. You know, I mean, you have to rise above yourself and be better than who you are. I mean, these are all sort of idealistic, you know, rainbows of parental guidance. Some artists are like, yeah, I was strung out on heroin for 3 days, and my kid was running around the apartment, and you know, you know, if you're like the Kurt and Courtney kind of thing,
Oh gosh,
you know, or you know, and who knows, you know, I mean, kids are going to be imprinted with what they're going to be imprinted with, you know, and it's a shame that a lot of people raise their kids the way they do, you know, but I think that a lot of people, there's a misconception that if you're an artistic person or you are leading a creative life, then you may not be a good parent. And I sometimes think that it's actually the opposite in a lot of ways, you know. That's a generalization. But like, hey, here's this person who's got a dark personality. I've struggled with depression, you know, I've struggled with addiction. I've had unstable financial situations in my life. But you know what? My kid is happy. She's adjusted. She's not a fuck up.
Yeah.
You know, she's awesome grades. She's courteous. She's humble, you know, and all these kind of qualities can be instilled in your kid regardless of your, you know, whether you're an artistic person or not. Those are those are human qualities. I think the biggest challenge for artists when you're being a parent is your own ego. We're self-centered people. It's all about me, and especially if you're an addict and you have addiction issues, you're even more self-centered. So getting yourself out of the way so that you can be a good parent and be a better parent is probably the biggest challenge, because artists are just totally fucking self-consumed. It's all about me.
Yeah.
What I need, what I'm doing, what I'm working on, and my expression, and my emotion, and my happiness, and my place in life, and my career, and my and me, and me, and I, and I, and me. So I think that's probably one of the biggest obstacles is getting yourself out of the way and shifting those things so that you can be a good parent. That's probably one of the things that I've struggled with.
Wow, to me, it sounds like you're doing a great job.
Sounds nice.
Well, you've spent time with Diana.
Yeah, I love Diana.
She's
yeah,
a good kid.
She's a really good kid. Yeah, you could tell. I'm sorry. Do you have a question?
I kind of just wanted to touch on like the practicality of life. Like, again, going back to like finding the job that you think is good for you, that you're not.
I'll try to give you some advice. I don't know if I give you some advice and you're like, Chris, God, what? You know, I'm not sure I'm authority on that, but I'll do my best.
It's just like, how do you find the balance in your life to do those things, to support yourself, but also try to express yourself every day or however often you do that? Like, it's something I feel like I quit my job. Like, I was working customer service, and I was like, oh, this sucks. And then I was like, I gotta go. I just gotta be out. And luckily, like, I'm very fortunate to have like still living with my parents. You know, I still have a roof over my head, and it's good. Like, I have money saved. I'm good, right? But I still need to, like, if I want to advance in my life, I need to make money for myself, and I need to do all these things. But I'm trying to find a job that doesn't suck my life out of me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how did you deal with that, or what did you go through for that?
Well, I've worked some shitty jobs.
Yeah.
And I've worked some really great jobs, and it's just that if you're looking for a job that's going to give you the satisfaction that your creative life is giving you, it's a tough one. That's a tough one because, when you're pursuing your craft and you're sitting here doing podcasts or you're recording an album or whatever you're doing, the bliss and the satisfaction of that is not going to be aligned in the same way as it will be in a customer service job or
answering phones
or answering phones or working at some crappy technology company or flipping burgers or working at Subway or whatever you're doing, but it's trying to find the peace in the moment and realize that, that's just a passage. You're young. Yeah. You're going to have to cut your teeth a little bit. You're going to have to go out in the world and get beat up a little bit. I think that, as an older person, projecting these young kids,
they
these
don't
days.
know. Yeah.
Well, I think you do know. You know what you want. You want a job and you want to succeed and you want to be happy. Being happy at the end of the day is something that we all strive for. But happiness comes in different forms, and I think as long as you don't go into the situation feeling entitled, the big bad E word, entitlement, that us old folks project onto you young folks. I know that's a pressure. You're just entitled, you know. Okay.
You millennials.
That freaks me out. That freaks me out a little bit.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's this maybe I am entitled.
Yeah.
Maybe. So I get it. I think it's in those situations, you have to ask yourself, what am I going to get out of this for right now? What bridges is this going to allow me to cross for this moment? What am I going to learn about it? What can I take from the situation? How can I translate it into something else? As opposed to just having a huge block of your life where it's just a really crappy paycheck with a lot of taxes taken out. And you've got $6 at the end of the week, and you're still living with your parents.
Yeah.
It's like, God, how am I ever going to get ahead? And I think that's just about self-exploration and going a little deeper and seeing what parts of yourself that you want to magnify. What are the parts of you that you really have to offer the world, and going out there I just need a job. Well, what do you want to do? I really want to be happy. I want a job that I really, really like. I want a job that I want to go to every day and I want to love it and I want it to love me and I want to get paid and I want to love the people I work with. Okay, well, get a little granular, and you may have to go through some jobs and some passages where it's not necessarily about what you're doing. You're going to be learning how to do things, because with each job, you develop a new skill set. And that skill set may translate into a skill set that you're going to use 3 jobs from now.
Right.
And you have to be present and you have to be aware and you have to be focused in that moment to say, okay, well, maybe this isn't about what I'm doing. It's about how I'm doing it, and that gives you a sense of peace to be able to translate it into the next thing, hopefully life isn't all about, you don't have to throw yourself into something where it's like, I have to do this just because I have to, sometimes it's just a cool learning experience. I went to a Hoover showroom in some crappy little town in Mississippi and learned to be a vacuum cleaner salesperson when I was 18. I've worked, I've done just a host of things that I've learned a lot of really amazing things. So the stress and discomfort and the misery that you may feel in the moment, it's just know that it's imprinting itself on you in a way that you may not be aware of now. It's changing you. Well, you know that you don't want to do that anymore, but were there certain experiences or conversations or people that you met in that moment?
Definitely, yeah.
Right?
That are positive, or you can see good in that.
I met this person. I met my next wife at this job. I hated that fucking job, but I met this person who changed my life. I met this one manager that inspired me to want to go into this. Or, so it's building blocks. And sometimes you don't have those connective dots in your psyche until 20 years later.
Right.
That's why.
That's why. So, there's no grand piece of advice. Bottom line is you got to support yourself. And sometimes that means just putting your ego aside and working hard and realizing that life isn't always easy. Easy is not something that should be part of your vocabulary when you're on your upward thrust, as a young person or even as an older person. You want some softening in your life and you want some comfort, and you have to claim that. You have to go fight for that, and you're going to be a little uncomfortable along the way.
I've never thought of it like that, like fighting for those comforts or the things you want. Yeah.
You have to work hard for that.
Yeah.
People think that wealth and success and cool garages and whatever, and
Amazing
not that this is the pinnacle of success.
Yeah, the pinnacle of garages.
but there's certain comforts that I have in my life now, that I'm happy about, that I'm satisfied with, and those are comforts that come with hard work. And you work, and like Monica, through many phases in my life, just when I've thought that I've been working hard, she works like 3 times as hard. It puts me to shame. So push yourself every day and ask yourself, like a job that I just started. My boss. He's the founder of the company. He's 7 years younger than I am, and he's a real sharp cat. He's a really, really smart dude. And through like self-help books and business books, and we hear a lot of these sort of resonant things, which is like, okay, no matter what you're doing, when you wake up every day, what is the best version of yourself that you want to go put out there in the world? What's the best version? And push yourself to do that. What's the level of stamina, and what's the extent that you want to push yourself? How do you want to accelerate your life? Well, you're going to have to go out there and earn it, man. It's not going to come easy.
For sure.
As far as like looking into the future, what do you see your like? I think people our age get asked this question a lot. I think because we're not established into our whatever we're gonna do yet. So a lot of people always ask us this. But like in your shoes, like where do you see yourself in like 10 years, like either creatively or family wise, or like what's something that you're striving for at this point in your life?
Man, that's a great question. At the very base of it, my ego is sort of flailing around, and I really want to get this next album finished. Yes. So all the songs are written, all the arrangements are done, all the vocals are recorded. Everything's there. I just sort of need to piece it together and put the building blocks in place, because I know I have a great album. I know it. I feel it in my heart, and it's something that even if one person listens to, I'm going to be proud of it, because it's going to be done, and it will embody a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
Like the book or the doc. It will it's a great chronicle, and I'll be really fucking proud of it when it's done. It's almost there. I've recorded a few things. I put 3 or 4 songs up on the web, and people really love it, and it's dark, it's moody, but so that's the first thing that's in direct.
That's right there. Yeah.
But
they're fine.
They are, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of children.
Yeah, I know.
Loud.
They're running around outside.
Loud children being loud. I can go yell at them.
No, it's totally
during this podcast.
I know we'll turn up the gain so we can hear them. Hey,
I love my daughter. Shut up! Shut up! Is it bugging you?
No, I'm totally fine.
Are you guys good?
Yeah,
I'm all right with it.
Okay. All right. Cool. Good.
It makes it real.
Yeah,
that's what the people. This is what the people want to
Come
hear.
on, man, the real.
Yeah.
And then Chris got so pissed off.
Yeah. He stormed out of the room and
It's
slammed the
like,
door.
Yeah, it's like. For me, I'm working on just being a little more at peace, and because I'm a person who is perpetually aggravated. I'm aggravated. I'm just an aggravated person, and I struggle with just being an angry, aggravated person with an external sort of, giving people the perception that I'm this sort of happy, easygoing person, but I'm not. I'm so focusing on my own sense of peace and serenity, so I can be a better husband and a better father and just a better friend and a better human being and be happy. Is something that I'm focusing on. I really dig, I'm coming into a place where I really, really enjoy more and more supporting other creative people. Whether it's in conversation, it's young people kind of pursuing their craft and what they want to do and talking with them and supporting them and their efforts. That excites me. In the business environment, working in a business arena and working to support creative people who are out there in the world doing really cool stuff.
Yeah.
You know, shooting great videos and great campaigns and supporting artists and all that kind of stuff. I'm in that position now, you know, working for an awesome company in Culver City. And, you know, I didn't see myself in that position, you know, but I'm in that position now, kind of like a producer, but I'm not. It's more of an operations thing. But it really gives me satisfaction to be able to support, you know, the creativity of other people. That really turns me on. And I don't know. I think as I focus on continuing to be clear, you know, and sober, I'll see the world in a different sense of truth. You know, I know that sounds a little cheesy, but you know, like going into the world in a truthful way when you're unweighted, you know, with clouds and darkness and alcohol
Almost
and
free in a way.
brooding. Yeah, I mean that sort of like emotional liberation that comes with, oh my God, I'm not waking up with a hangover and I don't hate the
worst.
fucking world, you know, and all those sorts of things. That's a really eye-opening kind of thing. It's enervating, you know. I feel like I'm vibrating all the time because it's like, wow, lots of information, lots of things that, you know, do I write a song? Do I write a book? Do I write a lyric? Do I, you know, do I want to write a movie? Do I have to call? You know, I have to do this. And so I'm like, my brain is waking up again, you know, and I'm kind of going through that sort of like channel of self, you know, right now as a creative person. And it's, I don't know, you know, just getting up every day and facing that, you know, and realizing my value as a creative person, I think is a hard thing.
So in the same vein of like moving forward with the next chapter of your life and stuff, I know that because Raiders was such a big part of your life, has it ever been like a negative thing where it's ever been almost like held over your head, like, oh, you've been put in this thing where this guy is the Raiders guy, you know? And have you dealt with that directly? Like, what struggles have you faced moving forward from that?
That's a great question, you know, and that's and I appreciate that question because it you know, it rings true of a very honest human need to know, like, hey, that Raiders thing is really cool, but it's also kind of dorky, you know, where it's kind of like here you are a grown man, and this thing from your childhood is still kind of hanging over you, you know, and so that's a component that has to make sense. And I think I spent, you know, if there's one thing that I do know in my life, it's what shame is, what creates shame, you know, and what dissolves shame, you know, how to mitigate it, you know. I mean, that's something I know really, really well. And Raiders is not something that I feel shameful about. You know, I did at one point only because I was embarrassed about it in my younger, drunker, more lost self. But as it was rediscovered and brought across into the world, I realized that a lot of those people who question that are, you know, coming from a place who, I don't know, don't understand, or they want to challenge me, you know, like, you know, is this it? Is this it for you, Chris? You know, playing Indiana Jones, is that it? It's like, well, that's not all who I am. You know?
Right.
And is it this thing, you know, it will always follow me. It will always be part of my life. It will always be something that I did. I can't separate myself from it. You know, I'm thankful for it. And when it presents itself again in an opportunity, I'm thankful for it. I'm always thankful to be able to talk about it. I'm always thankful to be able to show it to people. If somebody's inspired by it, I'm always thankful. So, you know, I think a lot of that is just coming to terms with the fact that it's never going to not be part of me. It's just part of me, you know, and it did define me, and it does define me. A lot of things I've learned. Now, is it the only thing that defines me from this point moving forward? No, certainly not. You know, people can get stuck. They can get stuck, but I'm not a person that, you know, at least from an artistic standpoint, I get restless and I need to move on. You know, so
I feel like for a lot of people, either athletes or artists, like if you're a basketball player and then you retire or something, they always think, oh, you're a basketball player. Like that kind of, in the public eye, that kind of defines the person for their entire life. And it's until you like meet these people and you're like, they're people, you know what I mean? They're that was one part of your life. which is so I always think that's interesting to hear, like, because I think a lot of people, especially I hear about it in a lot of retired athletes where they struggle with who am I now, like who I played basketball, I was this really famous person, and now without that,
Or even like playing a character, like if you're on Friends or if you were in the office or something,
Exactly.
you're always Jim or you're always Rob.
You're always going to be known as that.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I can suggest to people is you're going to have to claim your own sense of peace in your life around knowing that that was just part of you. If people always see you as that, then that's what they are going to see. And that's not your responsibility to correct their perception. It's not your responsibility to make them feel a certain way. And it's not your responsibility to keep upholding that image of somebody else's idea of who you are. You know, you just have to be at peace with yourself, you know, to say, you know, hey, I'm not a star athlete anymore, but I was, and I have that chapter of my life, and I'm thankful for it. And now I am at peace with, you know, being a real estate broker, or I went into organic farming, or now I run a nursing home, or, you know, I'm a salmon fisher, or, you know, whatever, you know. Now, the real demons come if you are trying to return to your former self. I mean, that's the real torture, you know. Like, God, I really wish I was still Indiana Jones, you know. Well, I mean, is that realistic? Is that healthy? I really wish I was a star athlete. Well, you're 65 and you can't walk, you know, and you're hooked on painkillers, you know. I mean, what the fuck? You know?
that reminds me of those bands that play at you know, like casinos, like Pachanga, and you know, and they see the poster and they're like 60, 70 years old and they're still riding the wave of the Beach Boys or something like that.
Like Supertramp or like REO Speedwagon.
Exactly.
Or, you know, things like that. Now, some of those bands, you know, not those. I mean, you know, I mean, some of those guys who are older and ladies and bands and whatever, you know, regardless of gender, but some of them are actually pretty damn good, and they can hold up. Some of them can't.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember my wife went to go see Blondie, and you know, it's Blondie.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. You know, she's in her twilight years. She's 73 or 74.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
You know, and she's just like flopping around on stage, babbling.
Yeah. I can just picture this.
Bumping into
Right.
stuff. So happy to be there. You know, so adorable. And Monica was like, it was so sweet, but it was so painful to watch.
Oh man.
You know, and you know, but that was probably like, hey, do you want to go on tour? We're gonna give you a shit ton of money, and you go out there and kind of like enjoy the spotlight one last time. Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's good for the people who are
Why
watching.
not?
Exactly.
Right?
Too.
Yeah.
And if they didn't get to see her before, then you get to go out and like. I think it's good for both, even though they realize this isn't her in her heyday. Or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, actually one more thing.
Sure.
I feel like I'm really drawing a lot from my personal experience right now.
This is a very
Oh,
personal
man.
episode.
So, okay. I feel like I'm a type of person who like doesn't stick around for like if things get tough, like if I'm trying to make something or do something or like learn how to like do stuff, I feel like I just really get like super stuck. I'm like, this isn't working out. I just like move it to the side. I know you're into a lot of stuff or you do a lot of things. How do you avoid that? Or like, did you ever felt like you were mediocre at everything, or did you ever feel like you weren't like a specialist, or you weren't just a actor or just a...
I'm gonna turn this question around back on you.
Sure.
Oh, here we go.
Great.
What are you afraid of?
Like in the specific thing that I'm trying to do now, or just...
What are, when you are facing something that you are working on and it bottlenecks or it doesn't quite turn out as fluidly as you would hope in that moment, and you back out or you set it aside or you put it back in a drawer or you close it up or you lock it up and you forget about it and you move in another direction, what are you afraid of?
I think about when that happens, I think about, oh man, it's going to take X amount, like going to take way longer than I expected or thought this would happen. You know what I mean?
So what is that fear? Committing yourself to something that's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
hoping that you can reach the bliss and satisfaction of completion
without
effort and going through that. I like to finish things. I've learned to become a finisher,
Yeah.
you know, but I also have increased my threshold for pain and discomfort, you know, and stamina, which is required in going through that creative journey when you're creating something. You know, it's like a birthing process. You know, you're not going to know all the steps. You're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to have the reference points. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to face yourself, you know, when you're going through those things. And you're going to have to push yourself to new heights of stamina. That's what creates wisdom. That's what creates skill. That's what creates reference points. That's what helps you get over your fear if you can push through that. You know, I mean, it's like we see it every day. It's the classic mythological tale. It's Lord of the Rings. It's Star Wars. It's Batman. It's all the superhero movies that you see. You face your fear. It's Indiana Jones falling into a pit of snakes, facing the thing that he fears the most. You know, face your fears and get through that. And I guarantee that you will continue to evolve as an artist if you push yourself through those moments where you realize, I'm going to give up. I can't do this. I just got to stop. All right. It's getting hard. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to move on to something else.
Yeah.
You're doing yourself a disservice.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it.
Have that voice in your head.
Yeah.
I'm doing myself a disservice.
Right.
You know,
right.
you're really doing yourself a disservice because you're withdrawing the opportunity. You are voluntarily withdrawing the opportunity and denying yourself in that moment to become a better artist.
Yeah.
And to complete the thing that is going to give you the bliss and give you the love and the satisfaction internally and help you become better, wiser, more skillful. You're stopping yourself dead in your tracks.
Man.
Be uncomfortable.
I'm good. Are you? I'm good.
Are
you good? I'm done. Are you done?
Oh, is this over?
Because here's the thing. Because you think that withdrawing, this is something that has come from many years, is that you are either going to be really deeply uncomfortable not doing, or you're going to be mildly uncomfortable doing. But both ways, you're always going to be uncomfortable. Life is uncomfortable. You're going to be uncomfortable for most of the time. And you have to go out there and fight for that comfort.
I feel it.
I like that.
I feel it.
I think that's was a recurring thing, but I deeply understand that.
I mean, your job, you just had a job where you were driving an hour and a half and parking in some shitty part of Los Angeles.
And telling people, you can't park there. Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
You can't park there.
Yeah, going to Starbucks and working at Starbucks till 2 o'clock in the morning and driving 2 hours back to your house and.
I remember going, I needed a job to make money in order to pursue what I wanted to pursue. I remember walking in the Ralphs, handing them my application, being like, hey,
I was there with this guy.
I was like, can I get a job here? And he looks at my resume. He's like, you have a college degree? And I was like, yep. He's like, why the hell are you here? And I was like, can I apply? And that was like one of the most dejected feelings. Because even like a job that they were like, what are you doing? Sorry.
Hey,
what are you doing here?
I don't know.
That was a
Maybe that was a Freudian slip that you were congratulating yourself.
good job.
Yeah, that you.
You did it.
Yeah.
You did it. But yeah, and that was one of the most uncomfortable things I'd gone through.
Well, you humbled yourself, and you went out there and you tried, and sometimes we need to put ourselves in a humble position. I mean, I've done that. I mean, the whole thing leading up to this job that I just got, when I was struggling financially and figuring out how the hell we're going to buy groceries and pay the rent. And, I mean, you can be on the top of the mountain and you can be hit real, you can go really low, and sometimes like stripping your ego out of the way and being humble and willing to take those jobs sometimes, not demeaning yourself, and not realizing that you don't have value, but setting your ego aside, humbling yourself. What did you learn?
I think I learned, if there's anything that's like, I don't know if I learned hard work. I learned that like if I didn't have any time to do anything, and I was just doing everything I could to make ends meet and to do do what I wanted, to make music, to pay for my own place, to be working 3 jobs, driving back and forth, at 11 o'clock at night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, and walking back home through LA, like a not nice part of LA. It was just, I like those situations.
Were you uncomfortable?
Yeah.
So now I know that you're in a management position, living in a comfortable spot.
Mm-hmm.
You're close to work, so you've got to
So close.
Yeah.
you got a little bit more comfort in your
Mm-hmm.
life. Do you feel like you earned that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel proud. And
Yeah.
it makes me like getting that little bit of comfort and that little bit of it just makes me want more.
Because you know what the other side is like.
Yeah.
And you pushed yourself through those passages of discomfort to get out to the other end, to be able to gain the true deep realization of what it means to say, I'm not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through it. I've met this quota
Yeah.
of, I've pushed myself in this direction. I'm going to move in another direction, and that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
but you learned, as opposed to fuck this situation, and having a resentful engagement with it, but going through it and
Yeah.
doing it anyway. And sometimes it's not what we're doing, it's how we're doing it, but you did it well.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't like it, but he was really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You want to add anything else?
No, I'm happy with this. I'm good.
I am also. Thank you.
Thank you. No, we
for
Thanks,
appreciate
being
guys.
on. Yeah, this
You know.
was I feel like I'm walking away with a lot.
Me too,
Yeah, I
low-key,
feel
yeah.
this-
Good.
this
I'm
was-
glad, guys. This was cool for me too, just to sit, and talk with you and share and throw a little tantrum and open up and be vulnerable and use some obscenities and
Thank you too for being really open with us. Like we
For
really
sure,
appreciate
for
that.
sure.
you're welcome. No
Yeah.
problem. It's it's the most helpful way to be, I think. It's if it wouldn't be real otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree. We could have just smiled and laughed at each
Yeah,
other.
nice
the whole day.
questions. Let's keep it on the periphery and ask
Yeah.
topical questions. But I don't know. That's not really. None of us are going to learn that way.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Catch you on the next one.
Peer pressure. Pressure. Peer pressure.